This video will be most helpful to you if you've already watched the full video on how to use ShapeRigger Plus. So go ahead and check out that video if you haven't already. Alright, so in here I'm going to be talking about Genesis 9 and some of the unique challenges that it has and how we deal with them in our G9 specific version of ShapeRigger Plus. Now Genesis 9 has a bunch of different pieces separated out, right? The mouth, the eyes, the tear, eyelashes, eyebrows, all that stuff is separated from the main mesh. And that can be a little bit tricky to work with. We deal with that with ShapeRigger Plus, so no worries there. What I'm going to show you is that sometimes people will create shapes where it also is dialing another shape. So I just dialed up my body shape. If I go to currently used, you can see I've also got the feminine body dialing up. And you'll also notice there's some other things dialed up, like the eye resting focal point and the navel and mouth realism. Those are all turned on. When you're creating morphs, you really need to be using the Genesis 9 dev load, which is located in here, and use that dev load because it comes in without morphs applied and doesn't have the extra geometries in there. Once your morphs are loaded, it's really hard to work with if you don't also have the mouth and eyes and all that stuff loaded. So we did make this so it'll work. It handles you loading just the regular Genesis 9 in with everything already there, and then you can go ahead and do your rigging and everything. That's a pretty nice feature. It handles the fact that you have these morphs dialed up, and what happens is when you launch ShapeRigger Plus, you will see it zeroed out the figure. So it recorded the active morphs in order to restore them later when you close the tool. Now we're down to just the basic Genesis 9 shape and no extra stuff dialed up. And this is important when you're going through and you're rigging things, because you need to have just the morph shapes themselves and not the morph shapes plus other things piled on top of it. So let's go ahead and close this. Another thing that you'll run into is on the head. You can see that the eyes are moving, the mouth will be moving as well. And so you'll have to worry a little bit about the bones in those areas, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's just go ahead and get back out here and look at these morphs. Let's go ahead and favorite these morphs. I've got a body and a head. Now these two happen to dial up other morphs. They don't have to, but they do. And I just want to show that it actually works. And then we'll go up here and launch our ShapeRigger Plus G9 edition. Okay, the first thing that you'll see is that it'll say that my morphs have rigging. Now this is because the body morph dials up the feminine body and the head morph dials up the feminine head. So we can just check them and go. Now I can go ahead and just rig selected morphs. And what's neat about this is it's going through and it is doing the head and just finding the bones that should move with the head and just moves those. It goes through and does that for the body as well. Now when you do the head, one of the tricky things is that the eyeball isn't on Genesis 9, but to get the best placement of the eye bone and the eyelid bones, you really need to calculate the location of the eyeball itself rather than just the eye socket. And so if you run ShapeRigger Plus and do this setup, it will actually take care of setting up the eye bone positions correctly for you. So let's go ahead and check it out. And you can see as we move the head, the eye bones and the eyelids are perfectly centered where they should be and following properly. And all the other bones as well. All right, now on Genesis 9, you actually don't have to worry about the mouth too much. Well, I'll show you. All right, so as we dial up the head morph, you see the mouth is moving. It's automatically moving, but it's not distorting. And that is good because most of the time you're not going to change the shape of the mouth. The only bones in the mouth that actually need to be rigged are the tongue bones. And the only time you ever have to deal with the tongue bones is if you make a morph that changes the shape of the tongue. In this case, I didn't. Most characters are not going to change that shape of the tongue, and so most of the time you don't need to do it. But if you do find that you have made a unique shape on the mouth and it needs a morph, that's piece of cake. Go in here, I need to show hidden. Okay, so we found our morph here. You can see all it's doing is moving that. But let's just pretend that this morph actually did need to be rigged. All you do is favorite it and then run the tool, and it will detect that this is the G9 mouth, and it'll know exactly what to do. It knows not to try to move any bones except for the tongue bones themselves, and it'll safely set it up for you. So you can go in there and rig it. And while the mouth is selected, you can go ahead and save the morph if you want to. There you go. Now you see how we've made it easy to work with Genesis 9 morphs in the Genesis 9 edition of the ShapeRigger Plus tool. We automatically handle the eyes for you, we put protections in place to make sure just the correct bones and morphs get associated with your morphs, and we make it easy to rig the tongue when necessary.